on Warren Hill as a student project. This isn't critique or commentary. I want to be clear. Good morning. Welcome to our honored guests, our highly dedicated and devoted faculty, and of course my fellow graduates from the Capilano University Early Childcare and Education Programs class of 2016. Personally, this presentation marks the result of a 9-year journey through the early learning years as an educator. As a student, this has certainly been a period of choosing to bypass the proverbial road less traveled in favor of just charging through the densest forests and blazing my own trail. I took chances when I could have played it safe and willingly faced the ramifications that came along with it. Suffice to say, standing here presenting my final project is quite emotional and overwhelming. So if I have to stop periodically to recompose myself, just bear with me. And please know that I could run a little long as a result. But I'll do my best. It might also be worth pointing out that this is the very last Dave-created assignment and/or presentation in the history of this program. So for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, nearly everybody involved in this program will tell you that at some point it's perfectly normal to stop, look at somebody beside you and go, say that out loud? There's a couple of here that know. I just asked that you imagine what the faculty has gone through over those years. And I know that there are a few people who are in this audience who've come here specifically to support me, but I'm sure there's also a few of them that have that morbid curiosity about what's going to come out of my mouth when I have absolutely nothing left to lose. For the record, my mom is in attendance though, so I will try to be on my best behavior. Before anything else, I want to acknowledge that we are standing on land that was cared for traditionally by the people of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Boston, and Squamish nations before it was silently stolen from underneath them. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that I'm extremely privileged to have attended this university and enjoyed the incredible education that brings me here before you today. Despite the affluence that exists in North Vancouver, this type of education is not afforded to everybody in the community. However, it has been accessible to me, and for that I'm grateful beyond words. I'm able to be here learning what I love to do, learning to do what I love, and talking about what I've learned. But I digress. My name is Dave Cannell, as I've said, and I'm here to present the exploration that I did with the children of the Collingwood Neighbourhood House Preschool entitled What We Know About Teachers. For context, this project came along at the tail end of one of the most challenging years of my life. In January of 2015, I was maintaining a good grade point average and heading into my last 2 practicums. I was managing a school-age care program, which would later become a 3 to 5-year-old program, both for the first time. I was feeling incredibly confident in my practice and with my image of a child. At this point, I was also 2.5 years into my marriage. But by October of 2015, right about the same time that the research portion of this graduation seminar was beginning, things in my personal, professional, and academic lives had started to take a dramatic turn for the worst. By February of this year, I had watched my marriage, my career, and my self-confidence completely crumble around me. And at this point, there were only about 6 weeks left in the research phase of this project, and I was absolutely and completely lost. My mindset was destroyed, and my project had ground to a halt again after the already 2 restarts that I had already had. I was struggling to hold myself together and present the image that I was okay when I certainly wasn't. As a result, I was now facing the very real fear that I wasn't going to be able to finish this project on time, which would mean failing the class and not graduating for another year. And the sheer idea that this was now plausible had absolutely torn me apart. However, I was shown a lot of support from our faculty advisors who reminded me that even in this dark period, so close to the end of the term, I still had a lot of time to come back from behind and create something incredible. As well, if there was somebody who could manage to turn this all around and pull it off, it was going to be me. At the time, I didn't quite believe it, but as I was looking through the supporting research, I rediscovered the words of Christina Delgado, who pointed out that at times life is completely contradictory, complex, and fractured. This, along with Nanny DeFranco's thought that some of life's best lessons are learned at the worst times, somehow forced me to pull myself together and get back to work, and the rest, as they say, is history. As I said earlier, I've been linked to this program since September of 2007. As I approached the end of my time here, I wanted to try and figure out a way to go back and look at what I had learned and reflect on my time within the program and within the field. Doing that, though, would move my investigation towards my interests and away from the interests of the children, which is the whole point of this project. So I thought about how to go about it, and eventually decided to explore how the children were actually constructing their image of a teacher. Well, why? And what does that even mean? Well, within the program, we're challenged to examine and re-examine our image of a child, to move beyond seeing a child who needs our care, attention, and assistance, and to begin seeing them as the unique and dynamic individuals with their own identities, histories, and understandings of the world around them. Yet, after a few years in the field, we tend to assume the role of an expert. After all, we've attended hundreds of lectures, read countless textbooks and articles, spent weeks on practicums, and have had a huge background of theoretical knowledge to draw from to support our thinking and our understandings of why children do what they do. However, the reality is that for all of that theory, we simply do not know who the children are within our care. Carlene Arnoldi talks about a child not as some helpless waif, but as a human being who is capable and competent in their own right, a child who needs to be seen for what they really are, valued and special. They are each their own person, and they are filled with boundless potential. Yes, they may lack the diverse life experiences that we've had in our lives, but trust me on this one. To quote David Bowie, they're quite aware of what they are going through. So thinking with that, if you imagine a teacher being evaluated, you're probably going to think of input from families, colleagues, co-workers, supervisors, licensing officials, or even the occasional visiting post-secondary educator providing input and feedback to a student on practicum. Yet, it was still mindful of the other staff in the room as well, especially if that staff used to be a student. But any of these evaluations is going to be based around short observations of someone who knows that they are being watched and are acting differently. It's just what we tend to do when we're being reviewed. Case in point, as I said, my mom is still in the audience right now, and I'm trying to be on my best behavior and appear somewhat professional. Anyway, the children are around the teachers the entire time that they are in the program, from the second they get dropped off until the second they walk out the door at night. And thinking of Rinaldi's image with the child, why are we not asking the children for their insights into our practices as a part of our larger evaluations? Occasionally it seems as if the children know us better than we know ourselves, so why not just outright ask them? I mean, if we even tried to ask children for their insight, what might they tell us? How might our perceptions of ourselves and of the children change? How might the children's perceptions of themselves change once they actually began to feel heard, valued, and respected? What kind of fire could we light off of one simple spark? Well, I entered the Collingwood Neighborhood House Preschool for the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning sessions, and began to bring up the question of what is a teacher. I wanted to go slowly at first to let the children form their own opinions about this new idea before attempting to challenge their thinking. Well, as a male in the field, let alone as, me, I know I'm not the stereotypical image of a demure, nurturing, Lady Bountiful type of a teacher. But maybe this fact laugh at that. But maybe this fact would force them to consider alternatives to any sort of existing image that they had. I started by joining the children in various activities and asked them very basic questions about teachers. What does a teacher do? What are their jobs? What sort of things do they say? Well, the children seemed to be stuck for an answer at first, and I was met with a string of very short observations and stories and a spattering of, I don't know, which at first I interpreted these responses as the children simply not doing a lot of reflection. But it was brought to my attention that maybe they did know. Maybe they just didn't know how to explain it to me and they just needed more time to think. So, I tried to bring forward art as a new language to help them work through what they were seeing and experiencing. However, many of the children had either no interest in the art area or only very wanted to quickly run in, draw the things that interested them, and then move on to something else. So the next challenge became to find a medium that they could use very quickly and capture clear images. So naturally, we turned to photography. Digital photography is everywhere. Odds are you have a camera on a phone in your pocket or your bag right now. But how do you feel about taking that camera and giving it to a young child and letting them just go and explore? Exactly. But remember the image of the child. They're around it continually, so why not use it for themselves? Using digital images meant that the children could take as many photos as they wanted to take, and then we could just go back and choose the photos of what the children were seeing in the program and further our thinking about what a teacher is. Now that we were able to slow things down and break them down, we looked at the specific aspects of the teacher's daily routines. We saw circle times, cleanup, snack, activities both inside and outside, supervision, or even just the teachers decorating the rooms. But we also began wondering and wanting to question if the children were able or willing to take on these same roles themselves. After all, what might happen if a child led a circle time or served snack? I wondered if those opportunities would help to give them a little bit more insight into regarding what the staff was doing and what being a teacher might mean now for them as well. One of the examples of a child-led experience was Miles taking on the cleanup transition between free play and snack time. Miles moved about the room, acting very much like the teachers that he had seen. He moved the chairs to the table, redirected the children, and started putting away everything that the others were either avoiding or just hadn't gotten to yet. As the cleanup time wound down, Miles even led some of the children to the washroom to wash their hands, talking them through the entire process, using the all too familiar phrases like, "Did you use soap?" "Now you need a towel." And of course, the dreaded, "Good job." He had a clear look of determination and purpose that masked that this was his first attempt at leading this, if not any, portion of the day. Yet, when asked if he wanted to hand out a snack as well, he insisted that he wanted to join his peers and have a snack instead. Well, I hadn't paid much attention to this at the time, as I was preoccupied with how naturally he had assumed the role of a teacher and wondering if we could get him to do it again. But not only did he engage with the children readily, he had acted very much like the person in charge. His words, his actions, and his mannerisms were all very reflective of the staff around him, myself included. But then why was he choosing not to hand out the snack as well? With no way of knowing for certain, it seemed possible that he saw a connection between the fact that the teachers were the ones who were handing out the snack, but then utilizing that time to go and complete other jobs around the room. Maybe Miles was concerned that unless he sat down, he would not only miss out on the snack, but then he'd have more work to do within the program. Which begs the question, how might his experience change if he saw the staff team sit down for a few minutes with the children over a shared meal, instead of simply occupying them with food and taking off to do the next job? How might the staff's connections with the other children change as well? Simply by following what he understood about teachers, Miles was already challenging me to look within my practice and to be much more aware of how even the slightest of my interactions with the children were being interpreted. However, it is much easier to be aware of the things that you do than it is to be aware of the things that you say. Which brings me to Salim. Salim and I really connected with my time in the center. I could approach him and he would answer my questions with that type of blunt honesty that only a child will provide. However, one day he simply stopped answering my questions. I would ask him something and he'd respond with blah, 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 blah. And naturally I started flipping through my ECE-trained mental Rolodex of possible reasons as to why there was now a change within him that day. Maybe tired or upset that something had happened earlier. He could have been trying to tell me that he was just simply done with this project, or he could just be messing with me because we had that sort of relationship. So I asked him, Salim, why don't you want to answer my questions today? And his answer stopped me in my tracks. Because you don't say please when you ask me if you can ask me something. Well, think about that for a minute. You don't say please when you ask me if you can ask me something. And he was right. Yet when he asked me if I would play with them, I waited for him to say please again and again and again before I reacted. Well, the unfortunate thing was that the other children felt the exact same way as Salim about many different aspects of the program. And they were certainly well aware that the staff not only didn't say it to the children, but that they didn't say it to each other as well. Well, because we don't. So now when we're ignoring our own expectations, we're also creating that power dynamic in the most subtle of ways. And why? For courtesy that you eventually outgrow? I mean, is it better to enforce an insincere please, thank you, or I'm sorry, than to strengthen that bond that you have with the child? Arguably no, especially if the request is still sincere, regardless of who offers it and who receives it. So when asked why the teachers didn't do what the children were expected to do, the children genuinely didn't know. The consensus, however, was that it was related to the differences between children and adults. They also questioned if at what point they would be able to stop being required to say please. And I just couldn't give them an answer. I didn't know. But at this point, the point of this moment is clear. The children are watching and they're well aware of not just what the teachers do, but of what they say and how it makes them feel. If I'm being totally honest, it's something that everybody could probably be reminded of, regardless of whether or not they work with children from day to day. If we say that we respect each individual child, then we need to remember to respect them as a whole too. Not just in the image that we project or the things that we do on the floor, but within the things that we say to them and the expectations that we have within our various programs. We need to be as consistent as we are with them as we are with ourselves and vice versa. And we need to teach them that the message is the important part, not just the literal words that they use. These are the things that have an impact. As one of my former students said, who's now actually entering grade 11, because where did that time go? Dave, you were extremely accepting of everything and very open to all ideas, no matter how crazy. And I remember so vividly that you would treat us like equals, which made life so much more easier at the tender age of 10. And, like, a big part of me is the way I am because of the positive, encouraging environment that you created. Well, as an educator, I know that the way of being certainly has benefits for the teacher, the classroom, and clearly for the student as well. So just imagine the kind of impact that these types of interactions could have had on the children, can have on the children as they grow and move forward, not just within our programs, but as human beings. They're learning from examples of not just what we do, but of what we say as well, and are going to be passing it on to the next generation as well. After all, we have no idea of what our impact will be on the child's life, so why not from the beginning try to make their impressions of us as positive as possible. As a student within this program, I can tell you from experience just how beneficial, enriching, and empowering it is to be authentically recognized by your educators as a highly unique individual. Not just by how it's impacted my experiences within the education, but also with the impact that it's had on my life as well. So, with that in mind as I wrap up, to the faculty of the Capilano University's ECE program, let my final words to you be this. This is to say thank you for the trust, the respect, and the freedom to take chances over the years. And this is to say I'm sorry as a result. Lord knows what you guys are going to do without me come September.